Governor Phil Murphy, New Jersey has led in some ways in this pandemic, some ways in a good way with the number of cases, in some ways in not a good way. Tell us, as you start to reopen, what does New Jersey have to offer the rest of the country, for that matter, the rest of the world, in the smartest way to start to reopen now?
Listen, I'm not sure. I don't want to pat ourselves on the back. We've lost 11,401 blessed souls, so we've been pancaked. I hope what we can offer folks is that, some basic sort of themes, which is number one, public health creates economic health. In as much as we're all chomping at the bit to get everything opened again, if we transpose those steps or we jump the gun, I think we throw gasoline on the fire. And I think we've been very deliberate. And the second handed glove with that is we say all the time that data determines dates. So in as much as we don't ever want this to be abstract, in fact, we eulogize a handful of people every day. I call families every day to make sure it always stays personal. Having said that, this is Moneyball. This is what's the data telling us and what's that data allow us to do. And I hope that we get that right. So far, so good.
And in just about every one of those briefings that I've seen, at least, you also give credit to people in New Jersey for complying with the restrictions that are not easy to comply with. You mentioned chomping at the bit. People are chomping at the bit in New Jersey and elsewhere as well. As you start to back off, and it's not just an on-off switch, it's by measures, how do you ensure compliance? It's going to get harder and harder.
Yeah, it probably is, but I have to say both individuals, David, in terms of staying at home and staying away from each other and wearing face coverings, as well as businesses, both big and small, the compliance has been overwhelming relative to any expectation. Now, clearly, as the weather's gotten warmer, as the clock has continued to tick, as folks see other states that have been less hard hit than New Jersey and New York, as they, that's all human nature, and I get that. Are there more folks today than there were a month ago saying, I'm going to open on June something? Yeah, there are some more, but I will say this. And by the way, I think the other point I would make is that we've started to open up. This is not, we recognize that we need to take steps. We're going to, over the next few days, announce a whole lot more steps. For the most part, folks have done the right thing.
What about the politics of it within New Jersey? We've seen, at least in some other places, some other states, a fair amount of politics involved, where some people are really not just clamoring to get back, but really demonstrating, pretty active in it. What's been the politics in New Jersey? Do you have the legislature with you? Do you have the politicians backing you here?
Yeah, for the most part, we do. There's been some demonstrations. There's no question about it. Nothing at the scale that we've seen in a place like Michigan, for instance. But there have been pretty regular demonstrations, and I don't begrudge that. We never have. I would prefer folks did them virtually and that they don't congregate, but that bothers me more than the demonstrations. There's always exceptions with any legislature, but we've had a very good across the aisle give and take, generally strong support, and we've needed them. We need laws to get passed. We need to, for instance, we need an ability to borrow money to fill up the enormous budget hole that we have, as an example. But so far, so good. Again, there are some folks who naturally in any democratic reality are going to go off and say and do their own things. But for the most part, we've been in a good place.
One of the tricky things everyone is confronting is reopening of the schools. Now, fortunately, with the summer, most people are not going to school anyway, but you've got the fall coming up. There's a lot of uncertainty about how that's going to work. As you approach that question, what are the criteria you're going to use? What are the things you're considering about how and when to open your schools?
Yeah, we've promised folks by sort of mid-June, we're going to give them guidance, at least on pre-K through 12. And we're clearly talking to the universities and higher ed community constantly as well. And it's my bias, David, strongly is that we get back to school. We've done the virtual stuff as well as any American state, but there's for a whole host of reasons, including mental health, the richness of the experience. I want to see us back in school, but it's got to be a new normal.